Teachers, professors of Reddit, what's the worst thing you have ever had a student unironically turn in? As a universitate, I had the joy of marking an in-class essay that started out as a normal one, but turned into pages of rap lyrics. It was all written out and structured so that if you didn't read the words, it looked like a proper essay. Another favorite was a student who just wrote no as their essay. The entire test was an essay, so all they turned in was one word. And no, it wasn't a witty answer to the question. And finally, I marked a test that was covered in red ink drawings of middle fingers, and this class is stupid. The funny part was they did okay on the test. Last kid sounds like the greaser punk from Shawshank Redemption trying to get his get. I used to teach computer science in university. I had a number of code submissions where the student just wrote pseudocode. If you aren't familiar with programming, think literally writing something like add 2 and 2 together, then show the result. I think they had someone else try and help them, so they put step-by-step instructions in comments, then tried to just uncomment that and turn it in. Worse, one student I had actually said it worked on their machine. No, Jared. No, it did not. You probably just forgot the .py extension for the file. For the first major research project in college, I had to work with a randomly assigned student. She didn't participate in any of the data collection or even really understand the protocol we were using. But the icing on the cake was that she word for word plagiarized her section of our paper from the example our professor had given us, which was an article he had written. No surprise, he noticed. I had a kid turn in a Wikipedia article as a research paper. He wrote the intro and conclusion, but the rest of it still had footnote numbers and, somehow, a slightly shaded background. These people doing a 30-minute group presentation copy-pasted all their slides. You could tell because they had that grey background highlight on all the text and a mess of different fonts within the same slides. It also ended up being like 5 minutes instead of 30, so they didn't even copy-paste enough. An essay completed by his mom, who had done his written work for years, according to other teachers. At the parent-teacher interview, I told her I believe the essay was likely plagiarized as it did not match the level of work that her son completed in class. However, the essay itself was so poorly written that there was no point in pursuing a lower grade than he had already received. Her husband gave her an all-knowing side-eye grimace and she turned bright red. Kid went on to fail my exam with a 4%. It takes a lot of freaking work to get a 4% on an exam. Savage. I like your style. Had a student, while student teaching, I suspected of having a parent over help with the work, but never had to escalate it that far. Students literally plagiarized about 2 pages of a book I had written, as if I wouldn't notice. One of my friends in grad school had sold her papers to an online paper mill as an undergrad to make ends meet. One of her students in grad school bought one of her papers and turned it into her. During student presentations once, I had to stop class to pull aside one of the students for mocking a dyslexic classmate for his spelling errors. Then, my random name picker selected rude student next. He plugs his computer into the projector and starts presenting, and the rest of the class immediately starts snickering. Rude student hadn't done the assignment at all. He had copied another student's file off of the lab computers and hoped I wouldn't notice. He had copied his dyslexic classmate's file, spelling errors and all. He got a 0 and a discipline referral. This is on me and I know it. I teach 6th grade and had taught about citing sources but not about reliability. Had a student turn in a science paper whose entire source list was Phineas and Ferb episodes. My favorite was a research paper about Black Panthers, literal, 4-legged Black Panthers, for a paper about the color of water, a book that touches on family, education, and race, including the Black Panther political group. Apparently the student did not read the book or pay much attention to the classroom discussions. I also especially like it when they copy and paste from different websites without changing the fonts. Native to the land of Wakanda. I'll always remember the time students had the assignment to write something creative. We'd covered poems, short stories, stuff like that. Even a diary or journal entry would have worked. It was a real softball of a homework assignment. A couple kids clearly phoned it in and that's annoying. But one kid decided to plagiarize Bob Marley lyrics as an original poem. Dude, you could have written 2 paragraphs about how you like that song. and we're all good. Now I have to drag you out in the hall because plagiarizing is a big deal and can get him in trouble with administration. That's over my head. Just felt bad all around, and I was a new teacher at the time and had never had to deal with it before. Seriously people, just half butt your homework or take the 0. If you don't want to do it, don't cheat. Once you cheat, stuff is out of my hands, and there's no way it's worth it on a dumb one-off assignment. I proofread a paper when I was a tutor where the author claimed that the song ABC by the Jackson 5 was educational. She argued that the whole purpose of the song was to teach children their ABCs and 123s purely because it had the letters ABC and numbers 123 in it. I made her listen to the song twice and tried to strongly convince her otherwise, but she kept insisting it was educational, so she turned it in that way. A student handed in an assignment for French class that he had used Google Translate for, except he made a mistake when selecting the language to translate from English. The assignment he handed in was in Finnish. Why for the professor? College kids being unable to distinguish between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans on a map quiz. Man, did you know Chicago was one of the original 13 colonies? Reminds me of 6th grade. We had a forced quiet reading time and teachers used that to grade homework. And the geography teacher in the middle just randomly slammed his table and started yelling about how could anyone, on a map of North and South America, think the Indian Ocean was there. I'm family and consumer science teacher. Home ec. I had a student staple together their sewing project. They had actually completed a beautifully constructed pencil pouch, 7th grade, but was too lazy to empty out the pencil pouch because they had already started using it. I give one homework assignment in my 8th grade course, make a meal at home or sign up to make one for a few teachers after school. This kid signs up to make one after school, gives me an ingredients list. It's just packs of ramen, no other ingredients. He promised it would be the best thing we ever would eat. I was grading anatomy papers once and a male college student mislabeled the T as a dong. I had someone else call the pectoralis major muscle that goes over the chest area the titimus major. That same kid also called the quadriceps the quadricicle. I had one male student mislabel appendix as the clitoris. So many good jokes came from this one. Also, I should point out that all of these were on accurate anatomical models, so these were especially bad mistakes. Titimus major had me dying. The students were asked to create a video for their final assignment talking about global warming, or something related to it. They were promised extra credit if they got a lot of people to watch the video. The idea behind this was to spread awareness and to incentivize high quality work. One student created a black screen video, put it on YouTube with a clickbait title, and spammed it around the internet. He ended up with enough extra credits to get an A in the class. He will probably be more successful because he knows how to market. I coach for academic decathlon, a test-taking extracurricular. I had one student that hadn't studied the regional test at all, marked all C, these are on Scantrans, and wrote his name as Animated's. Told him he's lucky it was me grading it, literally anyone else would have thrown his butt out. Man, I wish they had been a testing extracurricular activity when I was in school. I just couldn't get enough of those sweet tests. I had a student say something about how Jewish people wanted to end up in the Terezin concentration camp because it made them feel comfortable and nice. My English professor has a copy of a paper turned in by a student a few years back. All the professors got copies, saying how E.E. Cummings got his name because he said E.E. before. Well, Cooming. No one was sure if the kid was serious, but apparently the professor was sad to have to fail the paper. E.E. Cummings in her face. Now that's poetry in motion. Not a teacher, but I remember my 9th grade English teacher was returning essays we had written. When she got to the student behind me, she handed his back with a post-it note attached that had a web address written on it. In front of the entire class, she looks at this kid and says, "This is the website you copied your entire essay from." Only time I ever enjoyed that class. A mostly blank final exam with a poem on the back about how they were worthless and a failure. Yep, I've turned in a blank exam once or twice during my college career. It's the most debilitating feeling one could ever feel, especially after studying for several days for it. My husband is a professor. He had a student would consistently turn in papers covered in coffee stains. The last straw was when the student turned in another coffee coated assignment with the pages all stuck together and kind of lumpy. On prying the pages apart, it was discovered a coffee stirrer had somehow gotten sandwiched in there. The assignment was returned, ungraded. I taught technical drawing. One of the kids was getting suspended for a week. He asked me for work he could take home, since he couldn't do work using the software at home, because he didn't have a computer. I gave him a stack of worksheets pertaining to the AutoCAD software and told him to take a book off the shelf. The guy came back later after his suspension was over and turned in some of the craziest worksheets I'd ever seen. I told him, not one of these answers is right. The kid got all upset. He said, they all came straight out of the book. Then he showed me the book. It was Norton's Anthology of English Literature. I had a student in a graduate physics course turn in all the printed solutions with his name on it. He had the audacity to ask for a B+ so he didn't get kicked out of his program, lol. On my high school physics final I just wrote down every formula I could think of. The teacher gave me 1 point per, which brought me to around 30%. With a curve, that was a solid B. Not a teacher, but once a teacher told me about a student plagiarizing Pose the Raven. This gave me a flashback to 4th or 5th grade music class. We had some recital but I was going to miss it because I had a baseball game that night. Teacher said to make up the points I had to write a paper about a musician. Copy and pasted the entire Wikipedia page about Beethoven including citations and pictures. Teacher must not have cared because I got full points. I cringed just thinking about it. I once had a student who misspelled his own name. As an English teacher, I had a child turn in a creative writing piece that was pretty much the entire plot of Alien. When confronted with his plagiarism, he said he'd thought I wouldn't realize because it was a really old movie and women don't watch movies like that. Go in the other room, woman. The men are watching Aliens. Senior students were asked to submit a creative response to a prompt. The prompt was an image of a group of people collaborating over a map. I expected stories in the vein of treasure hunting, since we were reading short stories with that as the theme. One student turned in a 4-page creative essay about bestiality and gang violation because that's what they were plotting. Needless to say, he was sent to the counselor's office. We all have to admit that was a very creative response. Disturbing, but creative. During standardized testing, MCAS, classmate of mine was asked to write an essay on a piece of literature he read that talked about war. He made up a story called The Big War, and he wrote down a different classmate's name as the author. Surprisingly, he didn't get caught. A student was absent on the day a worksheet was due. I graded and returned the worksheets pretty quickly. When the student in question returned, she turned in another student's already graded worksheet. How, you might ask, did she hope to pull this off? She tore off the original student's name, wrote her own name elsewhere on the paper, and then used black ink to scribble over all the red ink on the worksheet, underlining, circles, X's, the grade, in hopes that I wouldn't notice I already graded it. Sadly, she was a dim enough bulb that the resultant 0 had negligible effect on her grade. Straight up pages long plagiarism from the internet always comes off as pretty stupid. Why does this keep happening? Are kids brain damaged? The kids are either that stupid, that lazy, or think that their teachers are that stupid. I had a student I was desperately trying not to fail who still owed me 2,000 word papers towards the end of the semester. I had a couple of conversations and multiple rounds of email with him. After a month plus of this, I received an email with the subject line, "Here are both papers," or words to that effect. I opened it and was confused because there were no attachments. Eventually, I figured out that he had typed the contents of the papers into the email. Not standard practice, but I would have let it go out of mercy. The reason it took me so long to figure this out was that I literally skimmed over the contents of each paper thinking they were part of the email header and indented text in the reply. He had written one sentence for each paper. The 2 sentences were 14 words. In total, that person is not in college anymore. I've told this one before in a similar thread, but I was a TA in a computer science lab. Had a student turn in a program that wouldn't compile. Why? Because when they copied and pasted the program, they also included the email header at the top, so they accidentally ratted out themselves. 2 other students the program was emailed to, and the guy who sent it to them. The thing was, I was there to give the students any help they needed. I would have helped them line by line. Ah well. In high school the administration came up with some stupid senior assignment and forced all 12th grade English teachers to assign it. My teacher thought it was dumb too, so he gave everyone an A. Well, everyone but me, because I didn't do it. A week after it was due he was like, just turn something in, so I did less than 10% of it and turned it in. He gave me a B+. I am a Spanish teacher and one kid was supposed to write a large paragraph describing his school schedule. He turned in one sentence that was written in English. Not a teacher, but a girl I knew in high school had to do a report on the framers of the Constitution. Came back with a research paper on farmers of the Constitution. Literally wrote about farming in that time period. Seems like farmers were a harder subject than framers. If she really did research, I hope she didn't fail immediately. I'm an earth science teacher. Last year, I assigned a project about careers in earth science. It was a pretty simple project where they had to make a PowerPoint or brochure about a career with information like salary, what education is required, what does a typical day look like, etc. A few kids did earth science teacher and most did a pretty good job with it, except Tony. First, he said that the hours that a science teacher works was 2 PM to 8 PM. I have no idea why he even put that, considering he goes to school and knows what time teachers work. He said the salary was $7,000 a year, and my favorite, he said, to be honest, a science teacher has it pretty easy. They just show movies all day and talk about science. I showed one movie the entire year and it was right before Christmas break. I pulled him aside the next day and said, Tony, let's talk about your presentation. He was like, it was great, right? And I just said no, it was terrible. Seriously? What were you thinking? He went on to explain that he completely forgot it was due until 10 PM the night before and bullshitted the whole thing, which I can believe, but even so, it's the one job on the list where he sees someone in that career every day. How could he possibly be so wrong? I also had a girl do marine biologist for the same project and she sent me slides about different branches of marine science and some basic information about it. It did not match what I asked for at all and even included discussion questions at the end. This was not something that was getting presented in class. I googled some of the info and quickly found the same exact PowerPoint that was used for a college intro to marine biology class. It wasn't even about the career. Not sure how she thought she was going to get away with that. Copied papers with the advertisements still in them. Plagiarized paper and parent said so. I don't see the big deal. A plagiarized and wiki article, including the citation needed link. My ex-wife received a research paper 100% copy and paste from the internet, including all the underlined hyperlinks, and claimed it was all original, even though she found the original website and presented it to the student. He claimed his computer was hacked and someone posted his essay to the site and was highly offended to the accusation. I was the student here, but sophomore year of high school I took AP World History, and at the end of the year, on the AP exam, there was an essay question asking you to detail some great migration in history, like the Irish to America because of the famine or slavery, etc, etc. Now, the question did not give those examples and I left it for last, and it did not state human migrations. When I got to it I had 15 minutes left and drew a complete mental blank. I couldn't think of anything. So I wrote a 2-page essay about bird migrations and how they flew south for the winter or whatever. A lot of it was BS because I didn't know anything really about bird migration. After the exam I told my teacher and she whacked me over the head. She had a jovial relationship with all of us. Everyone loved her. Results came and I still passed with a 3. I assume I got a 0 on that essay, but secretly hope the grader had a sense of humor. Absolute madload in art class turned in everything Sonic the Hedgehog. Final project we had to do a stained glass for a church, Catholic school, and he literally painted Sonic on the cross while Tails knelt and wept. The best part was the teacher tried to fail him, but the principal got the teacher to pass him, and the comment sheet at end of year said unhealthy obsession with Sonic. I used to be a special education teacher. I told the student to sign here after the IEP meeting. After the student and parent left, I gathered the papers. He literally signed here. Student had an IQ of low 80s and was not aware of such things being funny. He tried his best. I was tutoring in a master's degree, capstone subject that students complete at the end of the degree to graduate. International student of mine submitted a paper that was filled with photos of cats as part of the assignment. I had a student turn in a paper on Jim Crow laws that used the N-word several times. I had to explain why that word wasn't appropriate for a school paper. You have been visited by the IT lizard. Upvote or experience bad internet for a month. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.